Hello guys, it's me Simu Unohana, and in this video I'll talk about Onahana's Bankai through my own theory. I know that billions before me talked about the mystery of this Bankai, but I also want to give some of my thoughts about this Bankai and why it is like this. So before we start talking about this Bankai, my theory will depend on several elements like the concept of the Zanpakuto, the personality of Unohana, her past and her present, the Shikai of the 7th Kinpachi, and the most important element, Kirinji in his relationship with Unohana Yachiro. So as a general definition, the Zanpakuto is the Shinigami's special weapon and it reflects the essence of the Shinigami's soul. However, there are special cases like, for example, Tosin took Kakyu's Zanpakuto and he submitted her Zanpakuto and started using its abilities. Zaraki stole the Asauchi of one of the officers and he reflected his essence on that Asauchi, and so he obtained Nozarashi. The 8th Kinpachi was in a constant release of the Bankai for more than 250 years. Okitake got a second sword because of Mimihagi, and Kyorako get his second sword because Unohana gave birth to Okyo. And Ichigo has a unique Zanpakuto because he has multi-powers inside him, and there are other situations like the sacred Zanpakuto. And this means that in the world of the Zanpakuto we can find unique cases here and there. And I think Unohana's Zanpakuto can be considered as a unique one too. And to talk about Unohana's case, I will ask you this. Let's suppose we have a Shinigami X who is in a good mental health and he got Asauchi and then he reflected his essence inside the Asauchi and he got his Zanpakuto, but at some point this Shinigami shows a split personality disorder, so that he has two personalities and they are opposites. A real one which is the main character of that Shinigami, and a second one with all the components of the personality that we know, from behaviors, etc. So here I ask this question. Will the Zanpakuto of that Shinigami also be exposed to this disorder, so that as his owner he has two personalities? A character with the abilities of the first Shinigami's character, with all his abilities, and a second one of the Shinigami's second character that was formed later. In my personal opinion, this could happen, and maybe this is what happened to Unohana's Zanpakuto in a similar way. I'm not saying she has the split personality disorder, but her situation close to that. Because don't you think it's strange that a Shinigami like Unohana Yachiro has a Zanpakuto that its main job is healing people? We're talking about a professional of sword art. How would you think about a Zanpakuto that heals people and she loves fighting and killing people at the same time and enjoys battles and blood? Some will say it was probably because she wanted to heal them in order to enjoy their fight and therefore she had that Shikai. I don't think so, because Onahana asserted herself that when she wanted to learn the healing methods, she went to learn Kaido from Kirinji, meaning that this idea basically crystallized in her mind after a long time, after she had a Zanpakuto, Shikai and Bankai and fought several battles. And this leads me to believe that Unohana, before she met Zaraki in Kirinji, she had a different Shikai and Bankai than the ones we saw. I mean the Shikai we saw at the beginning of the story, or the Bankai we saw in her fight with Zaraki. Meaning we have two characters of Unohana with two different abilities of the Zanpakuto. And there is the one who loves fighting, the first Kinpachi, and maybe she originally had a Shikai like the 7th Kinpachi. Especially when we look at the name of the Shikai of Minazuki. The kanji used here means, I think, 8 drops of meat. Meaning this Shikai or this monster that you can see in this scene, I do think it has a different personality in the past. It has nature like the Shikai of the 7th Kinpachi. Instead of those traits that resemble the traits of the mouth of the blue whales, maybe it had sharp teeth with which Unohana was killing her enemies. But I think Unohana liked more fighting with her sword in the sealed form in order to enjoy fighting, and she used the abilities of her Shikai or Bankai only when she has to kill some enemies and not fight them for pleasure. So this is my personal perception. Before Onahana met Zaraki in Kirinji, it is possible that she was fighting with other abilities of Shikai and Bankai that reflect her true identity as a criminal and first Kenpachi. But when she fought to kill Zaraki, there was the big change in her personality. Zaraki changed everything about her to the point that at the end of the battle, she knew that she didn't deserve the nickname of Kenpachi, and she went in a completely different path, which is the path of healing. I mean, didn't you think with me that this radical change in Unohana's character will also affect her Zanpakuto? Transformation from a monstrous Shikai and Bankai to a healing Zanpakuto. This is what I think has happened. Especially if we check the time factor. Unohana is more than 1000 years old, perhaps 2000 years old. And if we take into account that the transformation in her personality happened after the First Quincy War, then she had centuries and centuries until her Zanpakuto adapted to the new situation. And thus, Minazuki, who was eating meat, became to eating people. And the Bankai, it will also have the same change according to my theory. And here we come to the last element in the story, or in this theory, which is Kirinji. It was Kirinji who taught Unohana all the healing methods, and he taught her Kaido. And certainly Unohana was with him in several places, like any student who follows his teacher wherever he goes. But didn't you notice something strange when Unohana released the Bankai? Her Bankai is distinguished by blood. Blood was flowing from everywhere. Didn't this remind you of another scene where blood was also present? Yes, the bloody pool in which Kirinji treated Byakuya, Renji and Byakuya. When Ichigo was with Kirinji inside the hot springs, Kirinji told him that this pool in which they are in is the pool, I think, of the white bone, in which their bodies are purified of rotten blood and Ryatsu, while the other pool, it contains pure blood. And that pool is the one that Kirinji will use later to save Nimaya after his blood was poisoned due to the overdose of Askinaklovar. So if we take everything I have said now, Unohana changed because of Zaraki and because of Kirinji and the methods of his treatment. Therefore I say that Kirinji affected Unohana in an indirect way when she was with him learning the methods of treatment. And as an initial effect on the Shikai, the toothed creature Minazuki has become without sharp teeth and thus has a healing nature, and Bankai will also have the same effect. I don't know what Unohana's Bankai might have been in the past. Was blood also present in Unohana's Bankai from the beginning, but it was as acid that dissolves bodies and bones? I don't know, but Kirinji's reliance on blood for treatment, it might have affected Unohana, and therefore the Bankai also changed its acid blood into healing blood. And I think these bloods work like a cleaner of the soul and the body. How is that? If you notice, Unohana did not release the Bankai in her fight against Zaraki until the last stage of her fight, exactly when Zaraki became much stronger than her, so that he regained his full strength, and before that she was defeating him, causing him to lose consciousness and treating him, then regaining consciousness and fighting him. And every time Zaraki was losing a lot of blood, and you can see this in several scenes. Blood was flowing from Zaraki a lot. However, when Unohana realized that Zaraki had regained the greater part of his strength and all the seals were removed from him, here she had only one thing left, and that was to purify his Ryatsu and remove the last seals by cleaning his soul from all those illusions in which he was living in. When Unohana launched the Bankai and Zaraki's sword clashed with Unohana's sword, Zaraki has entered in a special spiritual situation. I do not believe at all that these scenes are real, but this is Zaraki's imagination, as if he entered a surreal situation, reality mixed with the fantasy in which Unohana's Bankai entered him, so that the blood that was coming coming from Onahana's sword was washing him and purifying him from the last seals that remained. And Zaraki's words were going in this context, so he said that his eyes were closed as if he was in a deep sleep. He has awakened in a full strength now. Even Onahana's last words were like she was saying, I made this Bankai only for you, Zaraki. She chose the timing of releasing her Bankai so carefully. So in short guys, my theory can be summarized as follows. Onahana's Zanpakuto went through the same thing as Unohana. It had abilities that reflected Onahana's previous character as the first Kinpachi, but due to the changes that happened to Unohana, the Zanpakuto also took healing abilities, and Onahana's Bankai works as a purifying Bankai based on purification similar to Kurenji's Infernal Blood Pool technique, except that Onahana's Bankai restores blood to Zaraki, and at the same time she cleans his soul, watching it away from all the illusions that were sealing his power. So guys, this is my theory about Unohana. Give me your feedback, your opinions, what do you think? Tell me in the comments guys, and see you in my next video.